April 1945. Smoke blanketed the ruins of Berlin. The once invincible army, the Wehrmacht, was crumbling into dust. Radio broadcasts still blared about an ultimate victory, Endsieg. Yet reality on the ground had already shifted. Soldiers knew they had lost the war, but no one dared to speak aloud. Teenagers who only months before had worn the Hitler Youth armband now donned ill-fitting uniforms, clutching worn-out weapons. They were being sent street to street, not to fight but to die. On the morning of May 7, 1945, in the French city of Reims, General Alfred Jodl, Chief of Staff of the German Army, bent his head before fate itself and signed the documents of surrender. His pen carved the final line across Germany's destiny. Jodl said, "With this signature, the German people and armed forces are placed at the mercy of the victors." Everyone present in the room knew there was no such thing as the comfort of defeat. A day later, on May 8th, a second signing took place in Berlin, in the suburb of Karlshorst. That moment became the ultimate confession of the Nazi regime, its final breath. For those still fighting on the front lines, war had turned into a private battle of conscience. Some clung to hope of escaping the Red Army by surrendering to the Americans. One German soldier wrote in his diary on May 5th, "The war in the West is over. Everyone says the Americans will free us to fight against the Soviets, but deep down I know it's finished." In Germany's bombed-out cities, people hovered on the edge of madness. A writer noted, "Everyone now blames one another, yet each has forgiven himself." Did they really believe the lie or did they desire it? Hitler's propaganda machines still proclaimed the arrival of miracle weapons, but as Berlin lay surrounded, even the radios crackled into silence. Among German officers, quiet dissent began to spread. Many generals secretly reached out to Allied envoys, hoping to save what remained of their troops. A silent mutiny had already taken root, unspoken but deeply felt. On April 30th, 1945, Adolf Hitler committed suicide in his bunker. The war was nearly over, but most soldiers learned of his death days later. When word finally reached one frontline unit, a soldier whispered, "If the Führer is gone, who are we fighting for now?" Between May 5 and May 8, millions of German soldiers surrendered without resistance. Along the Allied zones, troops marched in line, hands raised high, moving between barbed wire and jeeps. Some faces even showed relief. Perhaps, for the first time in years, American soldiers handed out identification tags, food, and sometimes even cigarettes. For the Germans, this kindness was unfamiliar. They had been taught to expect monsters. The Soviet sector, however, the scene was far darker. Many soldiers were executed on the spot or sent to Siberian labor camps. Under Allied agreements, even those captured by Americans were later handed over to Soviet custody. Most never returned. When, on the night of May 8, 1945, Berlin radio solemnly announced, "The orders of surrender have been signed. The war is over." It was the heaviest sentence ever heard by the German nation. Yet beneath that weight lay a faint sense of relief. The bombings would stop. Their children would no longer die from fire falling from the sky. For the soldiers who had fought 6 years, believing in the dream of a 1,000-year Reich, the realization was brutal. A lie too long believed had finally decayed. That moment, the instant when Hitler's soldiers understood the war was truly over, was more than a military surrender. It was the awakening of humanity from madness, from the ashes of a regime built on deceit. A new world emerged, one forced to look into the mirror and face itself. That was the moment when soldiers, civilians, and an entire nation exhaled together, and for the first time in years, felt the weight of truth in their eyes. No Nazis remained, only human beings. Weary, regretful but alive, that was the moment when Hitler's soldiers realized the war was truly over.